Crypto Kids, the price of Bitcoin appears to be experiencing that downwards move that we spoke about yesterday, which could have potentially happened following the bearish price action and the bearish continuation pattern that Bitcoin formed. There is no CME gap left to be closed from the weekend, so Bitcoin is right now below this line of support. And to me, if we get this current 4-hourly candle, which will close in 3 hours and 49 minutes, below 88.1, then lower prices are to be expected. Don't worry, I'm not calling for 30K, 40K, 50K Bitcoin. A lot of people are. But there is a macro indicator which Bitcoin barely fell below from that I discovered today after a conversation with my very good friends now, commodity traders. They sort of inspired me to go out and seek if a production floor price existed for Bitcoin. It turns out that it does, and it's at 70K. I'm going to break this down to you in more detail on today's updates. Guys, thank you so much for 643 likes on yesterday's video. I know I said that we'll bring Carl and Ralph back on if we got to 1.5K likes. It was super ambitious. I think I'll do my best to bring them back on tomorrow because you guys did such a good job with the likes. If you don't mind, if you can destroy the like button on this video too, it would mean the world. Let's jump into the Bitcoin price action and we'll get into that macro production cost of Bitcoin towards the end. And it's something that you really need to find out about. All right, 4-hourly time frame. We're breaking below this pattern. A lot of the liquidity on Bitcoin is currently sitting at the 80.5 level. And there's also a decent chunk that sits below the lows created in April of 2025. And that's at 74.4K. My depiction of the charts is that if we get another 4-hourly candle closing below 88.1, and that seems to be where we're heading into, I mean, that closure below, I think we will come down to the 84.6. If we can't hold it, then the 81.5 to the 80.5 is going to be good support. But if we end up falling to those levels, then to me, dipping below 74.4, grabbing liquidity, solidifying a macro bearish trend just seems like a thing that Bitcoin would do. Is it changing my trading? Am I still not shorting at the 107K, the 99 to 107K region? No, that is still where I'm shorting Bitcoin. When I go to the weekly time frame, there's so many similarities between Bitcoin in December of 2021 to Bitcoin in December of 2025. I think the chart looks almost identical. Look, this was the price action there just 4 years ago in the last cycle. This is where we are now. And then it took until March of 2022 for Bitcoin to actually retest the daily 200 moving average and then see a drop to the downside. So it is possible that I perhaps anticipated a test on the 200 daily moving average a lot sooner. It's possible we do it in Q1 of 2026 instead of by the end of this year. But that's okay. I'm willing to still hold my positions to short at the 200 daily moving average and then see if we can consolidate into the downside until Q4 of 2026 post quantitative easing. That's the structure. But if you are a short-term trader that has eyes into doing scalp positions, then I think potentially setting up a trade where you can go into a short-term short, taking profits at the 80.5 and maybe extending it down to 74.5 to maybe even the 73K just below the April 2025 lows could also make a lot of sense. If that's something that you would be considering to open a short-term short, then taking profits just below these lows, just below 74.5, 74.4 could make a lot of sense if we confirm this 4-hourly candle below the line of support that we had on this bearish continuation pattern. It's very tough to make a bullish scenario. I mean, Bitcoin would have to go above 94K for us to invalidate this bearish setup. To me, it looks a little bit difficult. Let's see. I'm still shorting at the 99 to 107 levels. If anything changes, I will update you here on the channel as always. Now to the Bitcoin production cost value. So obviously Bitcoin mining isn't for free. If you want to create Bitcoin, if you want to be able to mine Bitcoin, there's a certain cost for it. And that cost comes from GPU costs. That cost comes from electricity costs. Some companies, some countries, some sovereign wealth funds can benefit from cheaper GPUs or cheaper electricity. In the Middle East, a lot of sovereign wealth funds can benefit from very low electricity costs. So where the average Joe pays about 70K per Bitcoin as a production cost, a sovereign wealth fund could potentially pay 40K or 50K. We know that American Bitcoin, they're paying about 45 to 55 because of their setup with the GPUs. So institutions and sovereign wealth funds, they will have a cheaper production of mining Bitcoin. That's why they'll be incentivized to mining Bitcoin more so than the average Joe. But if you and I want to go and mine Bitcoin, then it's going to cost about 70K for mining one Bitcoin. That is the production cost. That's the production cost for Bitcoin. It's a very common thing in commodities. Mining gold, extracting it from the ground, processing it, right? Stamping it with the approval of a company, verifying its authenticity, etc., etc. That has a cost. The mining of the gold from the ground has a cost. Or extracting or farming soybean, refining it, that has a cost. All commodities have a production cost, and there tends to be a floor price on that cost. If it's below it, it's in a discount, and that discount gets bought up quite fastly. If it's in a premium, depending on seasonality, when the harvest season is, if there's a lot of demand or not, it could be in a premium for a longer period of time, but it will always be around its production cost with a little bit of margin on top. Bitcoin is a commodity. It is classified as a commodity, but it's a different commodity. It's a little bit different. You still mine it. There's still a production cost for it. You just can't consume Bitcoin, or you can't make goods out of Bitcoin. It's a weird one, but it's still a commodity. When you look at this production cost by Paul, at Paul Wall Paul, he's highlighted that we've only fallen below the production costs like once in the Genesis cycle, which to me doesn't really matter at all. But if you skip the Genesis cycle and go into the future, you've basically not broken below it with any confirmations ever before. Bitcoin has always found support. When there's a halving and the miner rewards are reduced in half, then yeah, the production cost goes up all of a sudden. And you can see that the current support is situated at $70,000. You guys know that I think Bitcoin, even though from a structural perspective, right, we're very similar to the top that we created in the last cycle. But I think from a monetary policy point of view, which arguably is more important, we are very, very, very similar to the 2019 top created. We topped out on apathy. We topped out here on apathy 2. You have quantitative easing kicking in soon. Bitcoin topped out 2 months before the end of QT. Bitcoin topped out 2 months before the end of QT in this cycle as well. So to me, that's the top we're seeing. And to me, it's very probable that we drift around the 70Ks and then we start reversing back towards the upside. But I wouldn't be expecting any sort of significant 1, 2, 3 week corrections below 70K. Can we wick below it? Yes, we can. But I think this production cost per coin metric is a good one to be looking at and to have on your screen. And shout out to Plan C for posting it on X. That's where I was able to find it on. I'm sure there's different derivations of this indicator. I'm sure that some of them point to different price levels. I'm sure some of them point to like 65 or maybe over 70. But I quite like this indicator in particular, and I think it's a good place to. I mean, see, look, there's another one that looks at the Bitcoin electrical costs, which is at 68K, and then there's a miner price and so on and so forth. But they all average around the same number, which is in the 70s and 80s. So that's why I don't think like 30, 40K is a feasible bear market prediction to be making. Guys, I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you all on the next video very soon. Bye-bye, guys.